10 years, that's how long I poured my soul into the Navarro family's $100 million enterprise. I began in a cluttered corner office with a single computer and 2 assistants, juggling supply chains, contracts, and B2B partnerships. I burned the midnight oil while my wife, Elena, pleaded for me to take a break. I skipped milestones, birthdays, anniversaries, even my mother's memorial, to serve as the trusted confidant of Elena's father, Victor Navarro. He called me family, said I was the backbone of his legacy, said he relied on me more than his own kin. Pity he never formalized that trust. 2 months ago, Victor stepped down, stage 4, liver cancer, a discreet departure. Treatment overseas. With no sons to inherit his empire, he passed the torch to his eldest daughter, Sophia, my sister-in-law. Sophia, with her polished demeanor, cutting wit, and a boyfriend who fancied himself a visionary because he once dabbled in blockchain. The signs were clear from the start. She excluded me from key discussions, reassigned my staff, and began looping her boyfriend, Ethan, into emails that once bore my name. I stayed silent. I observed. I kept records. Then it came. At the quarterly board meeting, where I was set to pitch a $12 million growth plan, Sophia strode in, her smile dripping with triumph. "We're pivoting to a fresher vision," she declared, cutting me off mid-presentation. "A bolder, modern approach." She glanced at Ethan, who sported a tailored suit and an arrogant grin. "Your services are no longer required, brother-in-law." Snickers from a few boardroom lackeys. Even Elena stared at the table, mute. I scanned the room, composed, unflinched. Then I smiled. "Understood," I said calmly. "I'll empty my desk tonight." Sophia arched a brow. "You don't seem fazed." "I'm not," I replied, rising. "In fact, tomorrow will be intriguing." Because what Sophia didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd spent the last 2 years preparing for this precise moment. And when the truth surfaced tomorrow, their dynasty would crumble. Spectacularly. Chapter 2. The hidden clause they overlooked back at my office. While the others toasted my exit with overpriced wine, I locked the door, lowered the shades, and retrieved a single document from a concealed drawer. Clause 14C, signed by Victor Navarro himself, 6 years prior, during a late-night discussion in his library, right after I saved the company from a $28 million legal battle that could have buried them. "For your devotion," he'd said, whiskey in hand. "This is yours." It was straightforward. Effective immediately, 15% of all intellectual property, licensing, and digital systems developed under my oversight would be co-owned by the company and me. In the event of a leadership transition, this contract remained ironclad. Guess who engineered the company's software framework from the ground up? Guess who registered the core server patents in his name and licensed them to the business? Guess who crafted the proprietary logistics algorithm that slashed millions in yearly expenses? Me. And they thought they could oust me without repercussions. This wasn't a termination. It was a setup. That night, I remotely deactivated every license key from my private server. Customer portals down, warehouse systems paralyzed, the e-commerce infrastructure lifeless. I knew they'd call tech support first. They'd assume it was a glitch, reboot the servers, but they'd find nothing. Because the real code resided with me, always had. At 8:05 a.m. the next morning, Sophia called. Her voice was shrill, laced with panic. "What have you done?" "The entire system's collapsed. Orders are stuck. Shipments are frozen." I cut her off coolly. "I suggest you review Clause 14C of the private agreement your father signed. It's legally binding. I co-own the IP and you violated our contract by firing me without justification." Silence. "Then you're lying," I chuckled softly. "Sophia, check your inbox. And tell Ethan to brace himself before opening his." Because the next blow, it was personal. Chapter 3, the Ethan expose Sophia thought she'd upgraded. Her new strategic consultant, Ethan, was a smooth-talking Ivy League grad with a dazzling smile and a LinkedIn page brimming with jargon. He flaunted designer suits, preached about disruptive innovation, and boasted about crypto wins at every board meeting. But beneath the polish, a fraudster with a sealed record in Arizona, a string of bankrupt ventures, and 2 active lawsuits over misallocated investor funds. I knew because I'd hired a private investigator 6 months ago when Ethan first started lingering around the office, murmuring in Sophia's ear during meetings. He wasn't a danger then, but he was a pest. And I always keep tabs on pests, so before I left the building, I prepared a little farewell gift. At 9 a.m., as Sophia tried to pass off the system failure as a planned upgrade, an anonymous email landed in every major shareholder's inbox. Subject: Before you trust Ethan with your capital, read this. Attached was a 63-page dossier from my PI. Screenshots of Ethan's offshore accounts. Evidence of him siphoning $180,000 from a prior employer before vanishing. The kicker, a recorded call where Ethan bragged to a buddy, "Once I'm in with the Navarro family, I'll bleed that company dry." And he meant it. By noon, the board was in disarray. Stock prices started to slide. Suppliers began backing out. Sophia, she tried to deflect until Ethan vanished, phone disconnected, apartment emptied, gone. The man she'd sacked me for had abandoned her, leaving her to face the fallout. She tried calling me. 9 times I didn't pick up. Then she called her father. Chapter 4. The patriarchs returned by 5 p.m. An emergency board meeting was convened. Not by Sophia, not via email, but by Don Ricardo Navarro himself, my former father-in-law. The man who once sneered at me like I was a footnote at his daughter's wedding. He'd been retired for 2 years, savoring luxury in the Mediterranean. But when word of Ethan's scam and the digital shutdown reached him, he returned like a titan summoned by a storm. He entered the boardroom like a specter reborn. Everyone stood, even Sophia. His voice, steady and chilling, sliced through the tension. "Where is he?" Sophia faltered. "Ethan, he's gone. And the man you dismissed, the one who carried this company for a decade. Where is he? Trying to destroy us," she mumbled. Don Ricardo surveyed the room, his gaze piercing. "I warned you," he said. "You betrayed his loyalty, you mocked his work, and now he's the only one who can save this company." He turned to Sophia. "Fix this, call him, beg if you must." She didn't protest. That evening I sat on my terrace with a glass of bourbon when the phone rang, not Sophia this time. Don Ricardo, he didn't bother with pleasantries. "You have the recovery codes, don't you?" "I do. We need you back." I sipped my drink, gazing at the city I'd helped shape. "I'm not returning as a subordinate," I said. "I come back as CEO with full authority. You and Sophia step back." Silence. Then, agreed. The next morning, I entered the boardroom in a tailored charcoal suit, not as their lackey, not as their pawn, but as the man who'd rebuilt their empire and was ready to redefine it on my terms. Sophia couldn't meet my gaze. Don Ricardo gave a curt nod, my first directive. "Initiate a full ethical overhaul, and Ethan's office, convert it to storage, it's more appropriate." The board laughed nervously, but they knew. The true leader had returned. Chapter 5. The final departure asterisk. I didn't return to stay. I came back to claim what I'd earned, expose their secrets, and leave them with nothing but remorse. Within weeks, I stabilized the chaos, reversed Sophia's reckless deals, ousted Ethan's allies, and restored trust with the board, investors, and markets. But quietly, I was orchestrating my exit. Unlike them, I didn't need control to feel validated. I'd already triumphed. 2 months later, I called a final board meeting. Sophia sat at the far end, diminished, powerless. Don Ricardo watched me, sensing something. "I'm stepping down," I announced. Gasps rippled through the room. "But before I go, I'm invoking the final clause of my contract." I slid the documents across the table. A buyout. Thanks to the IP I co-owned, the value I'd restored, and the equity terms I'd secured upon my return, the company owed me $38 million in cash, not shares. It would gut their finances, and I didn't care. This was my final bill for a decade of disloyalty, deceit, and disrespect. Sophia's mouth fell open. Don Ricardo leaned back, face ashen, hands clasped. They knew they couldn't fight it. They'd signed the deal. They let me back in, and I ensured every detail led to this moment. As I left the building for the last time, I paused in the foyer. Sophia chased after me. "Why?" she spat. "Why go this far?" I smiled. "Because when you humiliated me in front of the board, I realized something. I wasn't just a cog. I was the cornerstone, and without me, you fall." She stood frozen as I walked through the glass doors into a waiting car, into a future free of them. Epilogue asterisk. I used part of the payout to start a venture fund for overlooked innovators. The rest, I invested in a quiet coastal town with someone who valued me as a partner, not a tool. Sophia, the company never recovered from the buyout. She's now peddling budget consulting services online. Don Ricardo, still alive, still silent, but now insignificant. Was this justice well earned? Share your thoughts below. What would you have done? Like the story, share it with someone who thrives on this vibe, and follow Alina's Tailies for more gripping stories of betrayal and triumph. Because here, every deception meets its consequences, and every betrayal casts a long shadow. Stay vigilant, stay bold, and stay tuned.